Hello and welcome to another out of spec testing video. I recently had the opportunity to spend the last couple days with the Lucid Motors engineering team, specifically from the powertrain side, charging the Lucid Gravity. Now, I've already put up like a 2-hour long video on our out of spec reviews channel, going through a lot of nerdy details about their boost charging profile. This video is going to be a lot shorter, just really focused on the charging performance of the new Lucid Gravity, specifically with the large 123 kilowatt hour usable battery pack option. Now, I charged this car both on a Tesla Supercharger, which, if you know, existing superchargers don't support high voltage, which means you have to boost the voltage on board, on board the Lucid Gravity. So we're going to talk a lot about that and show the supercharging performance, which is incredibly important because Tesla Superchargers are plentiful. They provide the best customer experience. And while you may not get the full big boy charging speeds that the Gravity can accept at a high power charging station, I still think most customers are going to choose to charge at superchargers, and the performance at superchargers is very impressive. That out of spec reviews video I talked about mentions a lot of the boosting technology that goes into actually making it interface really well with the supercharger network. So we're going to do that. We're also going to take the Gravity to a ChargePoint Express Plus station. I actually took the Gravity to ChargePoint's laboratory and charged it at its full big boy power, so you can see the massive charging performance of this car. And so, yep, we're going to dive into all that, but I'm also going to go through the cell type and chemistry trade-offs that Lucid chose, because I got a lot of access to the entire battery team to sort of figure out, okay, where, what were the compromises that went into speccing this car and speccing the equipment. We're going to run through the account activation, plug-in charge stuff. So this is really just going to be all about charging the Lucid Gravity, from the user experience to the data to the back-end technology that makes it work. Well, let's start with just a little bit of background information on the Gravity very quickly. If you've watched our out of spec reviews channel, you are already familiar. This is Lucid's new SUV. We've done a ton of testing on this channel and our reviews channel of the Lucid Air. We had one for a few months, put 15,000 miles on it, absolutely loved it, found a lot of room for improvement though. And it seems like all of the room for improvement has made its way into Gravity. And it's like, damn, everything I was looking for is in this vehicle. Now, I do want to qualify this video with, if you just want to like a very basic overview of the car, this is the highest peak charging power of any production EV sold in the US at the time of this recording. The only thing that might come close or might surpass it, we'll have to see, is the new E4 Porsche Cayenne. And that won't come probably towards early next year is my guess. Don't have full time frame, but that could be really the only thing that might be able to match the charging performance. This blows past Electra, which is just coming into our market in very small numbers. So really a monster charging vehicle. But of course, as we always talk about on this channel and why we do our 10% challenge, is it's not just about onboarding energy, which like a 24 module GM pack can onboard a ton of energy in an Escalade IQ, but it's about how far you can go after you've onboarded that energy. And the Gravity is promised to be incredibly efficient with 450 miles of EPA rated range with the large battery and the aero wheels. So that means even if we find a vehicle that might charge faster, like E4 Cayenne, it may not be as efficient as Gravity. I don't know. We will test. Therefore, this still could be the best charging car on the market for years to come, as far as we can tell. I mean, Taycan's right up there. Rear drive Taycan owns it in the 10% challenge. But in terms of SUVs, nothing's going to come close to this, at least for 2025 that in our market. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the cell before we get into everything, because it all comes down to the new Panasonic co-developed 2170 cell that Lucid and Panasonic both made together to the requirements. And what's really cool is, on our out of spec reviews channel, I've done some Li Mega testing. We'll actually have some more of that coming very soon. I've done some Zeekr golden brick charging, showing you 10 to 80% in under 10 minutes, showing you Li Mega charging at 550 kilowatts or so, over 5C charging. And it's just monster charging speeds. And so when I went to go visit with the battery team, I was like, guys, don't you know what's going on over there? Like, these cars are charging fast. BYD just did their megawatt thing. And not only do they know what's going on over there, they actually had a Li Mega cell right next to the Gravity cell to show me. And I was like, okay, well, they knew what I was going to ask. They knew what was coming. And to be totally transparent, I'm not a battery cell expert whatsoever. I'm learning a lot, but I got to meet with some of the battery team at Lucid, and man, did I learn so much. One of the biggest trade-offs, well, first of all, I want to talk, they chose a cylindrical cell for Gravity, and it was mostly from a cooling perspective. It was from an energy density perspective, and it's from a safety perspective. In a crash, the cells can deform a little bit without getting punctured. You can really jam a lot of active material into a cylindrical cell because you could just roll that jelly roll right up and get it in there. So in terms of energy density is really important. And in terms of cooling, if you have a relatively small cylindrical cell, like a 2170 or an 18650, not like a 4680 or 4695, you can actually cool that cell really effectively, assuming you have a good thermal management system. And charging really is all about the system of cell placement, thermal management, the controls, and that's what Lucid really focused on here. So why does it not charge at a megawatt? That was my question. I'm like, okay, guys, exciting for our market, but what's going on? And range is still Lucid's, main priority. They want to show the most range they possibly can because that's how people honestly buy cars. I believe that. I see that. My friends always talk to me about range, and I go, well, once you live with an EV, it kind of becomes about charging performance. But also, I do think what the perfect compromise is to get all the range and all the charging performance. And why do you have to choose? Well, that's what they wanted to show me. So I wasn't able to take any pictures or anything, but I saw the Gravity's 2170 jelly roll rolled out. I also saw an early version of a Panasonic used cell in Lucid vehicles. And essentially, it's all about the copper to active material ratio. Yes, what is in the active material, the chemistry makeup, the individual grain, like that all matters. But at a large whole, you can choose a little bit more cost, a little bit more weight, and a little bit less energy density by going with more copper, which would let it charge real fast, and less active material. So they could probably make this thing charge at like 600 kilowatts, but it might, instead of having 123 kilowatt hours usable, it might have 90 kilowatt hours usable or 80. That might be an interesting trade-off at some point in the future. And it's important to remember that battery technology is advancing so quickly. We are getting, over to being able to have high energy density and high power cells at the same time. So the cell chosen here was a real compromise. It really pushes it. I mean, they had a graph compared to all the competition of extremely high energy density because they want that 450 mile range. They want to jam as much power energy into the battery pack as they can. But then also for that energy density, man, does it charge way better than anything else on the market that's comparable. And so that was a real key focus of them pushing the Panasonic folks to say, look, we want all the charging, all the energy density, and let's just keep working on that. This is not going to be the last cell Lucid develops. And I have to say, knowing that compromise going into this, I think they chose the correct approach. And I'll tell you my reasoning why. This vehicle peaks at 405 kilowatts. That's the maximum request the car will send. They'll say 400. We confirmed in the out-of-spec reviews video, it's 405. Not a big deal. And there's pretty much no publicly available charging equipment today that can deliver that. So their thought was, we'll just get as much power as possible to max out all the infrastructure that's going to be in the foreseeable future, which is around 400 kilowatts or so. And then we'll try and make it hold that as long as possible. And at the same time, give you as much range out of the car as they can. And I really think they did a really nice job with this cell. The team was so excited to show it to me. They were so excited for me to show you the charging curves. But also they were like, hey, I'm expecting 500, 600, 700 kilowatt charging. And they were like, look, we still want to get huge range out of it. And it makes sense because when I look at Zeekr, just really quickly before we get into this, their small battery, the golden brick, is the one that charges the fastest because they've gone for huge copper content. The large NMC pack from Zeekr actually charges slower. And so they just, it's just changing the dial between energy density and charging speed. or power with your copper to active material ratio. So that's as I understand it. Wanted to get that out of the way first. I think this new cell is incredibly impressive. They were also telling me from a degradation perspective and a durability perspective, this thing is rock solid. The temperature window as to which it can perform is way opened up. So there's many other attributes beyond just those two things that they've just dialed in with this new co-developed cell that really is industry leading in terms of density and power. So that is really exciting. Let's get into what the battery pack is as a system. Well, there's the battery's broken up into a bunch of different modules. And so there's a small battery version, 16 module. We could calculate the energy capacity of that. That'll be in the Touring, not on sale yet. The Grand Touring and the Dream Edition get the 22, 24, 20, don't even remember, but essentially the big boy battery, which is 926 volts at 100%. The small battery is going to be brought down a little bit, of course. And yeah, exactly. It's 123-ish kilowatt hours usable, and it's about 126, 127 gross. So there is some buffer in there. And I asked a little bit about the aging strategy. Like, you know, with a lot of my vehicles, we'll run hard for a year and we'll notice, you know, like a 5 or 6% or sometimes more degradation hit in the first year. And they're like, look, we really wanted the Gravity to be all about consistency and repeatability. So they were like, the user will not really notice any degradation for the first maybe year or two at all, because they're just going to eat into that buffer a little bit. And that's designed basically to just give you the most consistent experience as an owner possible. I really like that approach. I think that's awesome. And, you know, most owners aren't driving from 100% to zero or charging from 0 to 100% repeatedly. But if you do, you just want that same performance that you bought the vehicle on day one, which is something almost no other electric car can deliver right now on the market. So that is really cool from a battery pack standpoint. The cooling system is massively upgraded from the Air, completely different radiator. It's got a compressor that is so quiet, but absolutely does its job. The cooling flow paths are totally improved inside the battery pack as well. And you'll see that from the consistency of the charging window that we did across myself and my buddy Tom from the State of Charge YouTube channel had just incredibly consistent charging experiences, which is not something I could say for Lucid Air. Every time we plugged in our Air that we had for months, we got a different experience because the starting temperature was this, or there was always a little variable going on. The Gravity was just like almost Porsche level of you plug it in, you know what you're going to get, and that's great. And to me, that was just awesome. So I really am thrilled to see the improvements from the Air here to the Gravity. And I'm sure it's not going to stop here. Lucid is always working on the next thing. After spending a couple of days with their engineering team, they couldn't tell me anything cool, of course, but like everyone was like, damn, there's some crazy stuff happening here. Like, can't wait to show the viewers, can't wait to check it out. I think what we're going to do is we're going to start by showing you the 400 kilowatt charging profile. And maybe just as a last point before we do that, I just want to talk about activation of charging stations with this vehicle. So the vehicle has a plug and charge capability along with it. It uses a native J3400 NACS port, of course. And, you know, the way that the activation works is on Electrify America and Tesla right now, the vehicle supports plug and charge. And it actually uses the same certificate for that inside the ChargePoint ECU, which is pretty cool. So you can go through ISO 15118. It can go through all of its, you know, TLS security, all of its certificate exchange, and it will plug and charge and work perfectly. I did that at Superchargers, worked great, really fast handshake time, not as quick as Tesla, but maybe not far off. I mean, it was just over 10 seconds, I would guess, for it to, from the time I plugged in for the time it started charging. It was really, really quick. And definitely a fantastic implementation. From the user side, there's an account that you set up inside your Lucid app, and that one account will activate Electrify America and, from a payment standpoint, and Tesla, and maybe more networks to come, perhaps Iona. And currently, at the moment, Lucid does not support the pricing tier plans like Electrify America Pass Plus or the Tesla subscription, but they are working on that, and it's a real high priority for them to basically allow you to buy down your per kilowatt hour rate with offers for membership with those networks baked in. Currently, I don't think there is a vehicle that lets you do that. Whenever I plug and charge with my Rivian, for example, on Tesla Superchargers, I get billed the really high rate. with Ford. I think same thing as well for EA and Superchargers. So I'm really happy that Lucid is making this a priority to essentially, this is a car you're going to want a road trip, you're going to want a boogie, and you're ready to rock and roll. No free charging plans with Gravity, which I think is the correct decision. And we're kind of past the days of needing to incentivize free charging. In my impression, it clogs up stations. It encourages poor behavior. I'd rather see them give a discount or an install offer on the home EVSE, the home charger, which is what they're doing. Okay, enough qualifiers. No, it's not. I got one last thing. I'm really sorry. The adapter situation. Well, in our full tour, when I'll leave the videos here on Out of Spec Reviews a couple days ago, I showed you both the J1772 adapter and the CCS adapter. And these are adapters that come with every Gravity. Every electric car needs 2 adapters these days because we're going through this transition period of CCS to J3400. And you need an AC version and a DC version. And the AC version is a J1772 to Tesla. It's branded, or to NACS, excuse me. And it's branded with Lucid on there. And it's an 80 amp version, which is really nice. Tesla actually only ships now a 60 amp version of the J1772 adapter. They used to be 80 amp. I don't know what happened there, but it's a really nice, looks just like the J adapter that comes with any Tesla, just rated for the 80 amps of the onboard charging capability of the Lucid Gravity, which is also a big benefit through the Wonderbox. 22 kilowatt for Middle East and Europe it can do. The high voltage adapter is actually a 1000 volt NACS. It's got the 1000 volt version of the NACS neck on there of the actual interface port, and that's rated for 500 amps on there. Now, when it goes through, is it UL2252, which is the adapter certification? Is it still going to say 500 amps? Not sure. Many adapters that are rated at 500 amps, once they go through UL, actually get brought down into the mid 300s. I'm not totally sure, but I will say is it is approved for use on Tesla Superchargers, which you wouldn't need to because they're not CCS, but it is approved for use by most every network out there because it's provided by the automaker. Typically, like what Electrify America and others will say in their terms of service, is you have to use the manufacturer approved adapter in order to use their network. Now, there's no way for them to detect what adapter you're using. In all honesty, we all know this. We've done videos on this, and that can be a little bit sketchy in my impression. But this is, approved by Lucid. It's rated for up to 1000 volts, 500 amps, which as far as I know, other than maybe A to C's Cybertruck adapter, this is the first 1000 volt, 500 amp CCS to NACS adapter equipped and included with any vehicle on sale. Hyundai Kias come with one, but they're much lower amperage rating. And so, yeah, I'm not happy with that adapter. I think that can lead to issues because you can overtemp it. This also has the ability, the DC adapter, it has thermistors in there that can dynamically derate the charging session, which is really cool. So if it does get hot, it's not going to just shut off. They can pull down the peak power or the charging power during the session. And if things get really hot, they can interrupt the whole signal, stop the charging process, and save you from a thermal event. Really safe adapter. I actually met the guys that did it yesterday up at their desks. It was really cool. Super passionate EV charging enthusiasts. We love to see it. And I think they've done a great job. We'll, of course, test the adapter, stress test it, but it all seems great. And so Lucid really has thought about everything here when it comes to the DC charging performance of Gravity. Right now, it's market leader in terms of peak charging power. It's very close to market leader across all segments of vehicles in terms of miles of usable range added per minute. And in terms of SUVs right now, nothing comes close in our market. I mean, really, this should be a better charging vehicle than Lucid Air, not only in peak power, but in terms of usable range, because it can just onboard so much more energy than the Air could. And you're about to go see that performance now. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump in the car. You can join us. We're going to drive over to ChargePoint's lab. I have to say a humongous thank you to ChargePoint for letting us go by their laboratory and using their ChargePoint Express Plus. I could not find a 400 kilowatt charger anywhere in the San Francisco Bay Area that was available to use. So I called up AJ and at ChargePoint, great guy. Also shout out to JP, a longtime friend of mine who runs communications there. He's actually how I got my Polestar 1, so shout out JP. Pretty cool. And I was like, guys, we got to bring over the Gravity. At the same time, Lucid was calling them to say, hey, guys, the Out of Spec and Tom need to bring the Gravity over. And it all worked out great, and we shot a fantastic video. And the charger, probably, you know, while we got within a couple kilowatts of max, we were charger limited for like the first 15%. We were probably down 5 to 8 kilowatts off what the peak of the car can do. Totally fine. I mean, you'll get the right idea. You plug this thing into an Alpi, though. I'll insert a screenshot right now. Boom. If you plug this into an Alpi, you will see full 400 kilowatts. Express Plus was brought down a little bit, 397, 396, something like that. So join us in the car, join us for our initial impressions, then you'll join me back and we'll analyze the data and run through the charging curves. Jordan is driving us over to charge this thing. We can't talk about how it drives, but Jordan, we have a 1% arrival at the charger. Proper. Hell yeah. Shane, how's the third row?
Feels good.
Yep. Can't comment on how it feels while driving, but the seating position is wonderful, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
Absolutely. Ahmad, everything good up there?
Lovely.
He's going to demonstrate some new software features, some sound system improvements. Dude, sound system sounds great in here. Jordan and I bumped it before. That was awesome.
That's good.
And my big Starbucks Trenta thing fits in the third row cup holder. So
route planning works right now. You said earlier the connectivity maybe was lost or something.
And we've got route planning, and even Ahmad made sure that it will show -% on arrival, so we'll know by how much we won't make it, so we can drop speed.
And sometimes you reduce your speed to make sure, oh yeah, I'm gonna make it if I reduce the speed by a few miles per hour, or you could of course know or manage to stop earlier, or there's definitely negative is a great to have.
Yeah, but with Lucids, just target 0% arrival, you'll be fine. Jordan is piloting us down the road at the moment at 1% state of charge, where he feels most comfortable in life.
Yep.
And we are on our way to go charge, so cruising and not gonna run out of charge. If we do, that'll be the next clip. The climate control has shut off at 0% state of charge. Lucid Air is 1%, right?
Yeah.
So hey, we get 1 more % of climate staying on in the Gravity. Worth it for the upgrade. But now we're going to be baking in here, so it actually shouldn't be too bad.
Yeah, it's not a bad day.
Yeah, no, it's nice out for sure. All right, we are here getting ready for the charging test. Jordan drove the Gravity down to just about 0% state of charge. We hit 0 a couple miles ago. We're not too deep into it, but it should be good. And yeah, so we're at ChargePoint's office. I have a whole deep dive tour that I'll leave linked in the description so you can see everything that goes on in their labs. This is the Express Plus, but it's an updated one. It's got a big screen, 400 kilowatt, which means we've got two 200 kilowatt power modules, those bricks that are feeding it. And it's got the Omni port. It's my first time seeing it. So you can essentially pull out your typical, this is like a Phoenix Contact branded, 500 amp situation into that, but you can also then just select NACS, because the Gravity is NACS, and then you've got your NACS adapter sort of built in. Super nice, actually way nicer than even Tesla Magic Dock. It's just a little connection switch by hitting here. If you tap your card and you have a car in your profile, it will automatically configure this so you don't have to do it every time. That's pretty neat, actually. And so, yeah, I mean, I think good to see some innovation from ChargePoint in this space. We are not necessarily here just to review the chargers, though, Jordan. We're here to see how the Gravity charges. So let's just run through the conditions. Ambient temperature is 71, 72 degrees. Feels a little bit chillier than that. I think it's just been baking in the sun a tiny bit. My guess is 60s or so. Don't even have it on my watch, but whatever. What does it say on yours?
On my watch.
54.
That doesn't seem right either. No one really knows.
It's not cold, but it's not hot. It's around 60 degrees, Ahmad says. Perfect. So then what we're going to do is we're basically going to plug in, look at the entire curve. We're going to monitor for fan noises, just see any abnormalities, anything good or bad that happens. Should be fun. It's the first high power charging test we're doing with this. And then once Jordan gets the cameras all set, we'll plug it in and let her rip. It is time to plug this big thing in.
Yep.
What do you think we're going to see here? Big power?
Big power.
Big power.
398.
I'm hoping for 400.
All right.
Let's see what happens. So I think we're going to use, I don't know if it totally matters, but I heard some talk about maybe the left side being a little bit better here. So we're going to select NACS. That will lock the Omni port together. We will then take it, and might be hard to do it one-handed. Maybe Ahmad, why don't you plug it in for me?
Yes.
Thank you. We're in. Okay, things are happy. It's waiting for EV. Oh yeah, we have some handshake action going on. Things are clicking, and it says Return plug. That's not what we want to see. Okay, so something's unhappy at the moment.
Charging stops, it says. Yeah.
Yeah, charging stopped. Yep. At 0%. That's a typical out-of-spec move.
We're not out of electrify America, though.
Yeah, this is ChargePoint. Take two, Jordan.
Okay.
Let's see if it'll charge this time. All right. So make sure that this camera is rolling. We're going to hit max there. Should lock everything together. There we go. And we can go in. We are in. Everything is happy. Handshake should go. And then we should see the power start to roll. Handshake's happening. Yep, we have some voltage right here. So it's doing isolation check. It's, obviously not going to be at 950 volts at 0%. We should see pack voltage here in just a second. There we go. We're at like 690 dead, 700 already ramping. Power's going. Things are happening. Love to see it. So, man, voltage is really coming off the ground, which is awesome. Already at 300 kilowatts almost. Well over 300 kilowatts. Damn, she's ripping.
397.
397. Love it. At 0%. Dude, that's
crazy.
That's great. Love to see that. Hell yeah. So the vehicle's requesting, 400 kilowatts. It says available power is 400 kilowatts, but it's only sending 395. We're close. It might depend on the exact charging equipment. You could probably get up a little bit more, but things are happening and sitting at 400 kilowatts right now. Love to see it, brother. And let's go analyze the data because this thing is ripping. Well, guys, it's time to analyze that charging session. And man, did this thing just pull like a freight train. Super cool. Absolutely love high power charging. And I have to say that the thermal management systems, I just have to commend Lucid on the thermal management systems. The air was always super peaky, super hard to predict. This just seems so much smoother as you would expect. You get into the constant current, constant voltage part of the charging curve really nice and early. It just holds that nice flat derate all the way to 100%, just keeping the cells right at max. We have so much to get into here. And what we're going to do is start just looking at the standard, SOC, kilowatt over SOC. So here Lucid states it as SOE, which is state of energy. Doesn't really matter. Basically the same thing. SOE typically refers to full pack, but in this case it's usable. So you can see we ride full 400 kilowatts to, meaningful somewhere around 15% plus or minus. And we'll of course on the out of spec Studio's website have the full graph so you can compare it to the competition in an interactive style. I will leave that linked in the pinned comment. And some big highlights for me are it holds 300 kilowatts to about 40 to 42%. So, basically 300 kilowatts to 40. So anything below 40, 300 kilowatts. At 50%, it's doing exactly 250 kilowatts, which is Tesla's peak charging for Model X, which is a little bit smaller battery. This is actually almost the identical size battery to Cybertruck. So when you go to our website, and maybe I'll even show you the graph later, we don't have the actual updated version of Cybertruck charging. I will get that before my truck goes. So I'll make sure we have that by the end of the month. That'll be on the website. But this charges 100 times better than Cybertruck with a similar size battery. So very, very impressive. We do have like kind of a short dip at 50% state of charge, and we may have run into like a thermal limit, just kind of came off the ideal charging performance between like 50 and 55%, because by the time we get to like 58, 59%, it looks like we're back into the standard curve profile. But I mean, I talked to Lucid, they're like, you're within the region. It's pretty close from what they've seen. So maybe it's not 100% perfect, but it's a really good representation of how the vehicle should perform. And one thing that's really interesting is, one of my curiosities was, well, we know and I'll show you in the next clip, the Gravity can charge at 220-ish, 224 to 225 kilowatts at superchargers. How much of that state of charge range do you really get the benefit of charging at superchargers? And it really is anything below 50%. So if you want to plug in at 35 to 40% state of charge, it almost won't matter if you go to a supercharger or an EA or an Iona or whatever, because you just get into the max battery pack capability above 50% on the supercharger there. And I just think it's a really nice curve. It was like 45 minutes from 0 to 90% or so, or even above 94%, something like that. A really nice solid curve. Really enjoyed that. You can see our range in EPA rated miles. By the way, this is the range calculation is all about the based on the car with the aero wheels. So the one we were driving had the big 22, 23 inch wheels, which won't get 450 miles on a charge. Obviously, put some big ass wheels on there that are not so aero efficient. But this whole is based off of the theoretical best charging performance with the aero wheels. Of course, that's how Lucid sent the data, but we can calculate it however once we get it all into testing. And you can see here in 30 minutes, you've done, close to 400 miles of added range, which is insane. But the big thing is if you need a 100-mile top-up, it's 5 minutes. If you need a 200-mile top-up, it's 10 minutes because it just has that nice, flat, holds big power all the way. So very, very, very impressive there. The last thing I want to talk about is how long it held power for. It held over 300 kilowatts for just about 10 minutes. So for the first 10 minutes, starting at 0, for those of you who don't know, we always start these tests like on the high side of 0. So it's when user displayed dips from 1 to 0, which does leave some variance, but it's okay. We do our range test till the car shuts off, but our charging tests start when the display dips from 1 to 0. And this does have a pretty juicy bottom buffer on it. The charging power of staying above 300 kilowatts for 10 minutes is impressive. There's very, very, very few cars on the market today that can do that. Maybe Taycan would be the only one that comes to mind. Because even GM stuff, while in the theoretical curve can hold 300 plus kilowatts for a long time, they always have thermal issues. If you leave AC compressor on, if you have, the stars aren't aligned, the moon's in the wrong position, you just get these big dips and surging with GM charge profiles. And in all fairness to them, I have to say they've just issued a DC fast charging update across all of their Ultium vehicles. Ultium's no longer a word, but you know what I mean. And so we have to kind of retest all of them. So that's sort of an unknown variable. Hopefully they've improved it. They really needed to, but without question, this is still a monster charging vehicle. The last thing to discuss here is the voltage curve. This thing at low state of charge really trails off on the voltage. You can see we started below 700 volts. We were at like 680, 690 when we plugged in at 0. And my guess is bottom voltage, which this is just the case of most battery packs, when they really reach the bottom, the voltage just trails off and hits the ground. LFP is known for this as well, but this particular cell and chemistry really sags at, maybe 2% state of charge, 1% state of charge when it drops hard. And that's what dictates how, you don't want to let it go super low because then you can have an issue, but there's protections in there. There's nothing really you as a user can do to hurt the car. Nothing to worry about. But I just thought it was so interesting how quickly the voltage got pulled up from bottom. We were quickly well over 800 volts, 825 volts by 2% state of charge, 3% state of charge. Man, just like over 100 volts spread from plugging in. That was really interesting. And then you can see exactly here where we get into CCV, which is basically at 76% state of charge, we hit max 937, 938 charging voltage, which is higher than the 926 volts resting at 100, because you always need this gradient, of course, for current to flow from the charger into the battery, but it's still unbelievably high voltage. We've seen almost 940 volts under charging. Some chargers can't even do that. So it's going to be interesting to see which chargers can't get this thing up to 100%. But most everything you guys would use is 1,000 volts, so it's totally fine. But it is pushing the boundaries. And so basically there, all it's doing is it's pulling the current back as it's gaining state of charge so that you don't over voltage the cells. So that's why it's constant current, constant voltage. And it's basically, you ramp down current, voltage stays flat all the way to 100%. And that's where it just kind of nicely comes into a top charging profile where they can put as much energy in there as possible for usage later on. So that's the high voltage charging session. Absolutely incredible. Absolutely beautiful charts here. I can't thank Lucid enough for pulling all of this data off the vehicle. This was remotely transmitted to them. They just boop, boop, boop. Shout out to my buddy Sriram over there. He got the charts all done. And now we're able to share them with you. So let me share some more clips from when we were charging the vehicle during that session, now that you know what happened, so you can see our reactions in real time. Then we're going to switch to the Supercharger boost profile, and then I've got one last session, which is really from my buddy Tom at State of Charge, which I still think I want to share with you guys because it's more representative of many public charging sessions you guys may experience. We'll do that at the end. So let's go see the ChargePoint sessions happening now. As soon as it dipped from 10 to 11%, we started to hear the fan cooling the radiator here. And so that's the first bit of noise. Pretty quiet though. No like major buzzing from an AC compressor or anything, just fan noise, which as it's still doing pretty much 400 kilowatts.
Basically flat, which the air was not really doing.
The air would never.
Air would never. That's the title of this video.
the air charged like kind of annoying. This is awesome.
Yeah, I keep seeing 397 spikes, but we're pretty much pegged at 395.
Yeah, it's just everything it wants right there.
Yeah.
So I think it should be around 200 kilowatts at 50% is my guess.
That'd be great.
Yeah, we'll see. But yeah, here we are coming off 390 now, 388 at 15. But man, the goal with this is get to a charger dead and just ride that curve.
Yeah.
So can't wait to see what else happens. But things are going well, dude. This is great. Now we've gotten into the EV charging curve where it no longer says station limited, it's EV limited, but still boogieing. Guys, I come to you for an interruption at 36% state of charge. We did 50 kilowatt hours in 8 minutes and 26 seconds.
26 seconds.
Yeah, freaking awesome. That's delivered, of course. There's always going to be some losses, but 50 kilowatt hours delivered. And we're still over 300 kilowatts at 37%. We love to see it. That's freaking epic. Jordan, things are going well in here?
Still over 300. This is amazing.
That
used to be like a brief spike on the air.
Yeah, that was air at like 5%. Now this thing is just so much fatter. Hell yeah. The fan noise, just so you guys can hear it. Nothing crazy. Not even hearing the compressor spinning all that much. Just sounds nice.
Right now, the Model 3 is really full. Like 50 kilowatt hours, that's your Model 3.
Yeah, that's 0 to 100 on a Model 3 LFP, basically. So 10% challenge. This is going to be good.
Yeah, exactly.
Here we go. Still over 300 kilowatts at 40%. I can live with that. I think we can all live with that. That's awesome. Hell yeah. We're just about to hit 10 minutes and we're going to be at 50, almost 58 kilowatt hours delivered in 10 minutes, which is freaking epic. That is what we like to see, folks. You can see pack voltage is, under load, of course, but we're at 900 volts, basically sending it. 10 minutes, 58 kilowatt hours. Loving it. Loving it. Who knew charging could be so fun?
Yeah, right? Why are we sitting here? That's great.
All right, guys. So I couldn't tell that the compressor was running in the Gravity. Obviously, I heard the airflow coming from the main radiator system down here. But if I just stick you guys here, this is where the compressor is. You can hear it screaming. Sounds like it's pegged at max RPM, but wow, did they do a great job on the NVH of that compressor. Super duper quiet. Jordan's sitting in the cabin. Can you hear the compressor screaming at all?
Not really. I wouldn't even know I'm charging.
Dude, I can't hear it. And it's at max RPM.
That's quieter than HVAC on like fan speed 1.
Think about Gen 2 Rivian. When you're on the outside, you can't talk.
No, you'd have to be.
You need megaphones to talk to each other. Damn, that's awesome. Looks like things are completed, right, Shane?
Yep.
No, it's still doing. Oh wait, interesting. 0 amps, 5 kilowatts, EV limit. What does the car say?
Oh, that adds up.
Car says charging complete.
Yeah, right there.
Hell yeah, brother. All right, so just to show that Imad didn't juice the other car for the video, we brought another. We brought another Gravity around, and it's going through Handshake. But I'm going to show you how this one. This is like a cool instrumented up one. We're going to show how this thing charges too, just for fun. May as well. It's at 0%. When else are you going to have 2 Gravities at 0%? Well, probably in not too long. We have a lot of testing to do, so that'll happen again. But yeah, should be fun. Yeah, this one's like a super hard.
How many miles?
7,000 miles.
7,000 miles, and has lots on it, lots of supercharging because it's in our validation.
Yeah, this is the charging test car.
The charging
Yeah.
test.
And it's been sitting for an hour without any preconditioning.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. So
Yeah.
big thermal window, right?
Yeah, super big.
Love it.
Big,
Yeah,
big.
it's too dead to do any preconditioning.
Just saw. Did we see 399 for a second? We're at 398, and we're charger limited, right, Ahmad? I mean, like this
Yeah,
thing would do
we're
400. Does it show?
It should be showing.
Yeah.
Blake said the software team screwed up something.
Okay, but it'd be funny for it to show.
Yes, I know, but it show it there.
Right, it does show it there.
We're
Yeah.
gonna bring that back.
Yeah, love it. Always blame charger. ABC. We love it. Well, guys, now it's time to show you how this charges at a Tesla Supercharger. And before I get into the actual nerd stuff about boosting, I'll just show you the data so we can, for those of you who don't really care how it gets there and just want to see what it does, this is what it does. So it has a boosting, just quickly to explain boosting. I'm sure anyone watching this video understands. Tesla superchargers don't support high voltage. They cap at like 480 something, almost 500 volts maximum. Most public chargers get up to 1,000 volts. And Teslas just have never been high voltage until the Cybertruck. And so in order to charge at Tesla superchargers, the vehicle has to have a way to take the low voltage and high current from the supercharger and go high voltage, which then will lower the current to keep the same amount of power, to then directly charge the Lucid Gravity's battery pack. And the Lucid Gravity does this completely differently than Lucid Air. Lucid Air used to use the Wonderbox scenario, which was limited to around 45 to 50 kilowatt boosting power. And that's actually how the European Gravities will be, and also the Middle East Gravities, with the front charging port, with the North American spec, with the rear charging port, which is to interface natively with Tesla, but also to route the cabling through the rear inverter and the stator to act as a booster function, and also the stator to act as an inductor. The, basically having that charge port in the rear allows that to happen with shorter cabling, and then you can actually boost the power really high. I went into like a 2-hour explanation on this in our out of spec reviews video, so I'll spare you some of that now, but here's what the performance is. Let's look at, again, kilowatt over SOE. So the biggest thing we wanted to see here was what is the performance like charging on a supercharger? Because I think most Gravity customers appreciate the simplicity, the location selection, and the location availability of superchargers. Plus, you literally have the Tesla experience. You back in, you plug in, you walk away, because it does plug and charge. It does all the stuff. There's no adapters you need to remember. It just perfectly works with Tesla superchargers. Now, most every supercharger, version 3s, are capped at 250 kilowatts. And, I'm excluding Cybertruck for a second, because it's not like they're high voltage for Cybertrucks. They just unlock more current for those vehicles, and they just dump current into those Cybertrucks, especially at V3 Plus stations, which is what we used here. And so most every Tesla, Model X as the direct comparison here, could do 250 kilowatts at superchargers. This can only do 220, but while the Model X does 250 kilowatts till like 25% or so, and then just falls off a cliff, this can just sit there deep into the pack. And it did over 200 kilowatts for, let's see how much time. It did over 200 for 20 minutes or so. Yeah, right about 20 minutes, it came off 200 kilowatts. So while you're missing out on that real peakiness that the Tesla has, it just, because you're way down off that 400 kilowatt peak I showed you before, it can just hold that power until where, in theory, it just intercepts that high voltage charging curve that we saw. And then you're at the max that the cells can do, all the way up to 100%. So this is a really fantastic charging curve for Tesla. And it means that you can actually get from 10 to 80% faster than Tesla vehicles can on their own network at their native voltage. And this is boosting. And I have more nerd stuff to get into with that in a minute, but very, very, very impressive. So you can see here, the time to add 100 miles isn't far off the, and again, we're calculating this off the same configuration, full range spec Gravity. The time to add 100 miles is just a few minutes longer. It's about 3 minutes longer on a supercharger versus a high voltage charger. The time to add 200 miles is about 6 minutes longer on a supercharger than on the high voltage charger. And I think no one really needs more than 200 miles at a time. That's based off EPA, but it's not like you're giving up that much time. Now, for me, if we're cannonballing, if we're doing a race to Vegas, if I'm really pushing it, yeah, I'll say, okay, I'll shave 6 to 10 minutes off my charging session by going to a high voltage charger that might be a little bit buggier, depending on what network it is, depending on the charger. But the nice thing is with Tesla, it just should be a consistent, nice experience wherever you go. And because the Lucid Gravity is boosting, well, we'll get into the next slide. We'll talk about amps and volts and stuff in a minute. But I just want to go back to this charging curve of SOE, kilowatt over SOE. You can see we tapered at about 50% state of charge to 60%. There's like that 10% window where there's a little bit of a dip. If you were to plug in at 10 or 20%, or maybe even 5% state of charge, not zero, it may have held 220 kilowatts even longer. Because again, in the previous session, we found that the Gravity could hold 250 kilowatts to 50%. Here we're seeing a little bit of an early dip. And that would be, my guess, is just the rear motor, the rotor getting a little bit hot, probably because we started at zero. But again, this is shaving off just a tiny amount of power where it doesn't really matter. And if you plug in at 10 or 20%, you probably will get no derate during boosting at all, which most people aren't plugging in at zero. But if you're a nerd Gravity owner and you plug in at zero and it's 45 degrees Celsius outside, you might see a little bit, and there's no wind to cool off the drive unit, because that drive unit's just sitting maxed out, not maxed out, but under load to boost the power up. Yeah, you might see a little bit of an early derate, but they sized the cooling, they sized the entire boosting system to handle long and deep sessions at superchargers, and I really have no issue with this personally, because we gave it a worst case scenario, and we tapered maybe 10% early just by a tiny bit. What didn't fall on the floor. Really nice, smooth discharge rate. And then everything from 60% onward pretty much matches the high voltage charging session natively, because that's when you're holding it right at the max of what the battery pack can do. This voltage curve is very similar to also what we saw charging at ChargePoint, and that's because this is the voltage of the battery pack. But I'm going to go to the next slide here and show you the voltage and current graphs, which to me is so funny, and I think illustrates why Lucid going with this boosting program that they did using the rear inverter and motor versus going with a split pack makes a lot of sense here. And so, we all know Porsche Macan Electric and Cybertruck go into split pack when charging. And that means that when you plug them in at 0% state of charge, not only are they at half their voltage, they're at half the voltage of their 0% voltage, which is on the floor. I mean, Macan is in the 300 something volt range. Cybertruck is, 500 or maybe even high 400 volt at 0%. And that means that in order to get a reasonable charge rate, you need a ton of current dumped in. Now, Tesla will give Tesla vehicles all the current in the world. I've shown you my Cybertruck charging at over 900 amps at a V4 dispenser site. We call them V3 pluses, which is V3 cabinets and V4 dispenser. There's no V4 cabinet installed at the time of this recording. If you're watching this in the future and confused about it, yep, there's we are limited to low voltage Tesla charging right now. The Macan cannot take a lot of amps. That has a platform limitation, just as an example, of 400 amps maximum. So the way that works is you start at 112, 115 kilowatts or whatever, and then you work your way up to almost 140 as you gain state of charge and the pack gains voltage. So in fact, you're incentivized to arrive at a supercharger, if you're charging a split pack car like Macan or even Cybertruck really, at a little bit of a higher state of charge if you're just doing a quick top up so that you can get more power. And I think that leads to a confusing customer experience. I'm not against it. It's totally fine. But the cool thing that the Gravity does is, because it's a completely electrically driven voltage request, because it's using the inverter to decide the input voltage, it can tell the charger, hey, give me everything you got from a voltage standpoint. And that means that it can, because Tesla, I mentioned Macan's limited to 400 amps, Tesla will not give any other vehicle currently on their network more than 500 amps. So that means even if you plug in an EX90 or Polestar 3, once they get NACS or with the adapter, they're still only getting 500 amps. They're not going to get the 600 plus that they request. And so by bringing what Lucid can do here is by requesting a relatively high voltage of around 440, 450 volts, they can then say, Tesla, give us 500 amps at that voltage, and they can really pump in the juice. And that's where they're getting that 220, 225 kilowatt charging speeds from, because Tesla won't give more than 500 amps to third-party vehicles. And you can see that right here on this left chart, where what Tesla sees, what the car is telling the charger, what's actually going into the car is just that flat 440 volt from 0 to 100%, which means you also get full power starting at 0. Another huge benefit is when you get the small battery Gravity, which is going to be lower voltage anyway. If they were to split pack that, then you'd really have even lower voltage and lower charging power because of Tesla's 500 amp limit. Here, that actually gets the same 220, 225 kilowatt max charging speed, because of this rear motor inverter. So in fact, the 10 to 80 charging time of the small battery Gravity on a supercharger, because we're charger limited, is going to be faster, which is really cool. And yeah, this is just such a great idea. Now, Hyundai and Kia do something similar to this with their boosting technology. I don't want to say identically. And you can see here the battery pack voltage versus the input voltage. The battery's going through the same thing that it had during the 1,000-volt charging session. It's just getting it the outputs coming out of the inverter to send it after the boosting. And if you look on the right chart here, you can see what's coming in from Tesla is just sitting at 500 amps. We do that a little bit early derate, probably just due to the boosting temperature. And then we just come down and follow the natural charging curve. Again, very nice performance here. No weird bugs, no weird NVH, nothing crazy. You do hear the oil pump from the rear motor when you're boosting running. So if you have one and you hear some noise from the back, that's all that is. I don't think it's too loud or too annoying. I was with the mod and he's like, we got to make that better. And I'm like, well, I actually think no one's going to mind. But they're very particular about NVH. You cannot hear the AC compressor when things get hot unless you stand literally next to the front passenger wheel. You can hear it spinning at a super high RPM, but it's just the NVH of this car is dead silent. The loudest thing is just the ambient air being pushed into the radiator by the big main radiator fan, and that's relatively quiet. So doing this boosting technology just makes so much sense to me, and it seems to be way more robust than Hyundai Kia's boosting strategy. We've seen them fail. In fact, I was in South Korea recently with an Ioniq 9 and having major interop issues, or it wasn't even interop, but having major issues getting the vehicle to charge. And what would happen was I'd plug in the Ioniq 9 to a supercharger, it would activate, it would start ramping, and then crash. And what's happening is as the Tesla chargers themselves are spinning up modules, there's spikes and ripple power and DVDT issues that essentially will shock load the inverter from boosting. And the inverter is, it's just a tiny little electrical thing, and it responds by a very quick voltage change and a voltage spike. And the supercharger goes, whoa, that's crazy. Don't, let's shut off out of safety. Like, hey, that could be sketchy. When you're doing that with a battery pack, it's a very stiff voltage. So as it spins up power modules to like a Tesla Model S or whatever, the battery pack is not, it can absorb those ripples without a big fluctuation and spike. And Tesla has really, really narrow bands of allowance for this voltage ripple and voltage spike issues based off of when they're spinning up and down power modules. And that can happen during the middle of a charging session as like 2 or 3 other cars plug into the site and it has to reconfigure its power modules. And I've had issues with like Ioniq 5. We showed with Jordan's charging test not too long ago where it stopped mid-session. And that's because someone probably plugged in and, there was a little bit of a voltage ripple as it changed power modules that were feeding the Ioniq 5 and freaked out the car. Here, all of the control strategies, everything's pretty much dialed to handle every switching configuration of Tesla. And they have an almost 100% success rate, they tell me, of no failed charging sessions anymore. They had a lot early on. They had to work really hard on the controls to keep that, inverter handling those voltage spikes and DVDT issues, so that they stay within the approved window. It took them a long time. I can't stress how much work went into making this car charge well on superchargers specifically, because that is what they expect their customers to use most of the time. So I'm going to play you a couple clips throughout the supercharging experience when we were there charging the vehicle. Hopefully you enjoy that. So check it out as we supercharge the Gravity and throughout the charging session. Hi, Jordan.
Hi.
We are at, why are you holding the phone like that?
Handing it to you.
Oh, thank you very much. This is the Lucid Gravity. Now, the video is kind of out of order because we've already shown the high power charging session at this point. We have no idea what's going to happen. This is the first time we took an Uber over here from the airport. We met up with the Lucid guys. They brought this sick blacked out Gravity, and we are going to plug it into a supercharger to see how it charges. Now, you're going to join me back at the hub to explain why this is such an important test, why we're really excited about the capabilities, I would say, proposed capabilities that we're about to find out of the charging performance. Do you just open this by hitting it? We got to ask the guys. Okay. With the Tesla Supercharger, we've specifically come to a V4 dispenser site. It still uses version 3 cabinets, which means that it's limited on voltage, but we have all the extra immersion cooled cooling, of these thicker cables. And so that means that we should have no charger derate with this, which means whatever happens is what's going to happen with the Gravity itself. So super excited about this, having native NACS capability, charging on the version 4 post. I think we just got it unlocked, which means we should be able to open the charging port. There we go. And there it is, the little NACS port, J3400. 1000-volt configuration, of course, just in their spacing. Same with V4 superchargers, because eventually these will be upgraded to high voltage chargers themselves. Still a little bit buggy, a little bit awkward, I think, in terms of usability compared to V3 Plus. We're not talking about these. We're talking about this. Jordan, you got the cameras all ready?
Everything is ready.
Hell yeah, brother. So what we're going to do is go back to the hub, explain why this is such an important test, and then we're going to put in a lot of work. Let's see how it goes. And a 3, 2, 1. NACS port is in. Oh, I've got to activate the supercharger. I'm silly. Let me do that. Oh, it's plug and charge. Oh, amazing. So plug and charge happening.
Wow, why are we here?
And then let's roll to the cameras and see how she charges.
Okay, 116.
116 kilowatt hours delivered. But that's probably what it believes was added to the battery pack. So 383 miles. This is the big wheels.
Maybe sense.
Okay, 116 delivered. Probably wasn't completely drained. What is the battery pack capacity on this, Jordan?
With the buffer,
Yeah, you'd get it all.
120.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, we know the air can go way below 0.
But that was pretty good.
Yeah.
Like, you know, obviously that last bit, it was top balancing, just like every car does. But like
7 kilowatts.
10 to 80 was faster than your car, 10 to 80.
Yep.
And this is still not at full power.
Yep. And mine drops to like 2 kilowatts.
And it's also just important to note that like the rear motor, you could hear a little oil pump, but it was really quiet. In my impression, they're still going to tune it and make it better because it's using that rear motor to boost that entire time. It has to use the stator and the inverter.
Yeah.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So you can absolutely just supercharge this car, plug and charge back in, not worry about it. And if you happen to go buy an Iona station or EA or whatever with native NACS, if you wanted to, or with an adapter, you can do that too.
Yeah.
But I think most owners are probably just going to supercharge them.
Think so?
I think so. Why not? It's nice. It's not that bad.
No, it's not.
I can't wait to see what it does on the high power charger. Everyone watching this video already knows.
Yeah.
So that was awesome, dude. Hell yeah. That's a great way to arrive in California.
Yeah, now we go eat.
Yeah. All right. We have finished our charging session, guys. All is good. Charging complete. Let's unplug. Let's see how this goes. So we'll take the supercharger handle, hit the button, pops out perfectly, nice and easy. Nothing super hot. Everything's good. Throw that back in there. And then done. Awesome. Well, I hope you found that informative and fun and was just excited as we were, as that was our first time. We literally, when we landed there, got off the plane, went straight to the Milpitas Supercharger. Our Uber driver was like, "You're going to a charging station?" Like, hell yeah, we are. Anyway, a couple other graphs to show you. I've pulled up Tom at State of Charge's supercharging session. A little bit different, a little bit weird. And I talked to the Lucid guys about it as well, and they found it a little bit weird as well. The vehicle was in all of the right parameters to take 220 kilowatts from the supercharger, but the supercharger was only giving them 210. However, the supercharger the whole time was communicating 500 amps available. There's like a weird communication bug. And this is the exact issue I believe that I found when I did my 10% challenge with the Rivian. If you guys remember, I was complaining about the Rivian's charging performance and lack of thermal management. And coincidentally, I also had, I think, this random 210 max output situation from a supercharger. So there seems to be some bug where maybe 1 out of every 100 or 1 out of every 1,000 sessions, I'm not sure the frequency, where the superchargers get like 210 kilowatts. It's because talking to my buddy Blake at Lucid, who did a lot of this interop stuff, he's like, I always get 220. If I don't get 220, then I'm locked at 210. And I'm like, that kind of makes sense, because with Rivian, I can always get 216, 217, 218 as the voltage comes up perfectly, and it's still doing 500 amps. But I've had a couple sessions with Rivian where I'm just locked at 210 as well. And it just seems to be a little bit of a supercharger bug. We're not sure what it is. They said they're going to ask Tesla. If any of you out there experience being capped at 210 kilowatts with a third-party vehicle at a supercharger, let us know. Regardless, it's only 10 kilowatts off peak here for Tom's test, but I just wanted to bring that up and show you his data here, where it's very similar to what we experienced with ours. And yeah, maybe it even held 210 kilowatts longer than we did just due to thermals. So anyway, that's that. And then I also want to show you the last charging curve, which is what Tom did. I was there for this one also at a public charging station. So as we've talked about many times, there are not many 400 kilowatt capable charging stations installed in the US right now. There are many 375 kilowatt charging stations available throughout the US right now. And the curves really are not too dissimilar if you go to like an EA or an EVgo 350 kilowatt station versus the ChargePoint or an Alpi unit or the new ABB A400. Those will start to spread out and be in use in wider areas across the country. But we thought it would be interesting to bring it to another type of charger that many Gravity owners will run into now. And you can see here, we started at 0%, still above 350 kilowatts. Many 350 kilowatt branded sites can do more. For example, Electrify America Signet stations can do like 380-ish, maybe even more. This EVgo Signet station could do, 375. They used a little bit different power module, but very close to that as well. But you can see it has to walk its way up there as the voltage rises. So it was amperage limited for the first little bit of the test, and then it came down. There was a weird little dip in the middle as well. Not exactly sure what was happening there. It's still, I still think we did a little bit better. It almost looked like it ran into a thermal issue because he came across 250 kilowatts at 47% plus or minus, and we were at 50% at the ChargePoint unit. Doesn't matter. It was a little bit hotter day when we did this. It was like probably 10 degrees warmer outside, but regardless. And this car, I have to say, this car we did this test on was like their charging mule. It had thousands of miles of only DC charging on it, but still performing well. And yeah, just a little bit interesting, tidbit for you there, which is even though the vehicle can do 400 kilowatts, if you go to an EA station and do 350, your overall performance is going to be very similar to finding a 400 kilowatt station. So still very, very, very impressive performance. The last point I just want to bring up really quick is about the DC fast charging derate strategy in terms of multiple sessions in a row. Each car manufacturer handles this differently. For example, some, like we've seen with Tesla, will let you hit the peak, but then lower the amount of time that you can hold at max charging peak. BMW will limit you all the way down to 40 kilowatts sometimes if it gets really extreme after only maybe 1,000 miles of repeated driving. It's really annoying. We ran into that in the i7 on the i90 Surge. We've known and we've talked about Lucids having a DC charging counter and a derate, but they're one of the few, some still do this as well, that let you earn it back with AC charging. And my understanding is the Gravity is either in its wide open big boy charging mode, or if you're driving it, nonstop across the country, like I'm sure we're going to do things like that. At some point, we'll probably, it'll flip a switch and it'll go into its, I don't want to say protection mode, but just into a little bit of a derated mode where you'll still get a monster charging session. They say it should only be a couple minute difference overall, the whole charging performance of our sessions. It won't be a big thing. They said I will notice it, but most customers won't. And you can earn it back just by a little bit of AC charging, and it should let you earn it back even faster than the Air did. They said they're not really too worried about the derate on this. They kind of just give it to you all the time. It's something that almost no customer will ever experience. So my view on this, I'm bringing it up because I know a lot of you will ask, because we talked about it a lot with Air, is just charge the crap out of it. If you notice that you're hitting 350 peak instead of 400 at the beginning of a session, for example, AC charge it for like a couple days, and then they didn't tell me exactly what the parameters were, but just AC charge it for a bit and then you'll get it right back. And they said, yeah, it's probably even still too conservative, but they'll open that up over time as the car goes through. And I think that's totally fair, totally reasonable, and I can absolutely live with their derate strategy. I think that's everything pertaining to charging the Gravity on itself. I think I'm going to pull up this charge curve comparison of all the sessions that we did between our 2 sessions and Tom's 2 sessions. Tom will also, I should mention, have a full dedicated video on charging and going into adapter topics more than I did and others with Imad and the Lucid charging team. So definitely check that out. You can see the big boy brown solid line session. That was us at ChargePoint. The blue solid session was us at EVgo, where we were, had that amperage limitation at the beginning. Not exactly sure why, but because both should really be 500 amps. But anyway, I guess that was just amperage limitation because the power modules, yeah, you would think it would be flat power at that point then just to max out the modules. But whatever, there was a little bit of a crawling up, still over 350 kilowatts, more than advertised. So thanks EVgo Signet for giving us a nice session there. Worked out really well. And then you can see the dotted lines are our 2 supercharging sessions. Tom just got unlucky with that weird bug that we see very infrequently to pull you down 10 kilowatts. Not a big deal. The rest of the sessions were identical. And the big thing is you can see just the consistency from essentially 50% on. This thing did the same thing. No matter what we plugged it into, no matter how we charged it, no matter the ambient conditions. You cannot do this with a Lucid Air. A Lucid Air just does not have this consistency, this repeatability. So I have to commend the Lucid charging team for saying, look, temperature window's huge now. The cells can get nice and warm. They can start charging fast. When they're cold, it will limit the amount of energy spent on preconditioning. It's just such a nice cell. The tuning is so much better. And really, as someone who drives Lucids a lot, I can't thank them enough for this because I think the viewers and me will just love this repeatability. And the last chart that I'm going to show you here is state of energy over time. And you can see while the high-powered native charging sessions charged faster, quicker, of course, which means we got to higher state of charge in less time, the overall 0 to 100% time is very similar between all of the sessions. And yeah, just really love that no matter if you use superchargers or high-power charging stations, if you're on a road trip, it probably won't make much of a difference to you. And you can just plug this car into whatever you want, and you're going to get a great charging experience no matter what. Very, very, very pleased with the overall performance. Now, the last thing I want to do is I'm going to pull up our website, and I'm going to give you a comparison of some other vehicles that we've tested in this category to give you a better idea of how it charges. The one qualifier before we look at these charts is when we look at SOC, state of charge, kilowatt over SOC, just a typical charging curve, it does not account for the energy added because all of these cars have different battery pack capacities. But we can look at vehicles with similar capacity, and then we're really looking at C rate. So what I have here is the Lucid Gravity Grand Touring selected on our interactive website, which we're going to massively improve this year. So shout out to Ryan for getting this already so good. And I'm going to compare it to the 2024 Fiat 500e. I'm just joking. We can. It's kind of funny. But we are going to compare it to some other competition. So the biggest competition in my book would be Tesla Model X and the Rivian R1S. Those two come to mind as direct competitors. So let's see what we can find here. We should also look at Macan. That could be interesting. But if we look at the Rivian R1 T Tri-Motor Max. Let's see what this one is. This is, yeah, see, I can't always just read everything. We got to adjust this chart a little bit for us here. Whatever. Anyway, this is basically the Rivian Tri-Motor. This is the 53G cell, not the 50G cell. So this is the new Rivian, same as R1S charging curve. You can just see on a bigger battery, the Rivian's got maybe 20 kilowatt hours more capacity, maybe even more, just like totally way the heck down there. And you can, obviously their 200 kilowatt limit is a nature of their low voltage because they cap at 500 amps. However, you can just see even when you get into the maximum performance of the cell later on in the session, that Samsung 53G cell just can't keep up with the Panasonic that's in the Gravity. And so the Rivian is, not only are you half the peak of the Gravity, your energy added means you're so much less over time, and it's so much less efficient than the Gravity is, not to mention just how thermally sensitive Rivians are as well. The repeatability of charging is annoying, and there's so many issues with Rivian charging, I can't even get into it. There's supposed to be a big Rivian update coming soon, but I can guarantee you no matter what they do, they can't match Gravity, and they certainly can't match the efficiency of Gravity with a software update, which means if you're going to do some road tripping, it's a no-brainer right here if you care about your time. I mean, just a night and day difference. Now, the Model X should be better, and I'm sure we have that charging performance somewhere. Tesla. So we do have some Cybertruck stuff in here. Let's throw that up real quick. So trying to think what we have here. This is like a pretty modern charging performance, 325 kilowatts. So yeah, this is great. This purple graph is a recent charging session that I just did on my Cybertruck. I didn't know Ryan got it uploaded yet. but I'm glad we have it. And you can see here we get up to about 320 kilowatts. And the cool thing is this has the identical battery pack capacity as Gravity. And this uses Tesla's 4680 cell, which has been a dud since the launch from a charging performance. Maybe from cost and manufacturing it's better, I don't know. But from a user experience, what I care about, it's not like I paid less for my vehicle because it cost them less to make the battery. Yeah, it just sucks because here you have, now we're comparing C-rate, same size battery for same size battery, and Lucid's way the heck up here on the whole charging session. So that is just so annoying for sure, without question. Let's look at Macan and Taycan really quick. So I'm going to pull up the Porsche Macan. Yeah, really nice charging performance with Macan, getting up to 291 kilowatt peak. We saw much smaller battery than Gravity, I should mention. It's probably 25, 30 kilowatt hours down and matches it. So Porsche uses a pretty hardcore power cell in their vehicle, which meant, less energy density, but for the capacity charges pretty well. Doesn't get the big peak of Lucid, but you have to give them credit where, they chose to go for a pretty big power cell, and everything from about 60% on, again, on a smaller battery, has a higher C rate than Lucid does, but it does trail off here at about 85%. The Macan falls on its face. Let's uncheck that because this is getting a little bit messy. Let's look at the Taycan. This is the new big boy battery for the Taycan. Again, a very expensive power cell. I love it without question. It's not that far off. It's about 15 kilowatt hours down, maybe close to 20 kilowatt hours down on the Gravity. And you can see it's still got a monster charging performance to it. So that's one thing that I just love about Taycan is this ability for it to sit at 330, 320 kilowatts all the way to about 65%. This isn't like a perfect charging session. We actually thermally derated in this one about 4% too early, whatever, still pretty good. Then the cooling systems hold it at about 200 kilowatts, and then it follows down up to 100, all about the same. That's what you get with a power cell. And so if Lucid did that, they could have had a power cell in the Gravity, probably would have smoked this charging performance, but then the energy capacity would be 20 kilowatt hours short or whatever, or more. So again, it's all compromise. Lucid's all about no compromise. Everything's a compromise. It's fun to make fun of them for that. We love those guys, but yep, this is the compromise right here. You've got a very energy dense cell that still charges well versus a very power dense cell that still has quite a bit of energy capacity, but two different approaches, two different form factors. Porsche uses a pouch cell. Lucid uses a cylindrical cell, and there you go. The last thing I really want to find is our Tesla charging sessions, but where's our Model S or Model X charging session? No, here we go. This is the same charging curve of a Model X that I just pulled up because this is a Model S Plaid, same battery. And you can see here on a battery that's a little bit less capacity, again, 20% smaller, it's about 100 kilowatt hours or so for the Tesla pack. Let's uncheck everything else. So we'll uncheck Cybertruck. We'll uncheck the Rivian. And so now we've got Gravity versus Model X. Not only is it a smaller battery, it's still just weak sauce performance. And that is just the big downfall of Tesla in my book. I love Tesla. I love FSD. I love what they're doing with software. Man, do I wish they could make their cars charge better. And so, just looking at these two vehicles side by side, you're getting less charging performance from the Tesla and less energy added over the state of charge range because it's a smaller battery. So I hope that gives some context into how this thing charges. We've got a lot of charging stuff to do. We even have a Rolls-Royce Spectre on here, so you could spend way more than the Gravity and get very minimum charging performance out of that one. Nothing exciting there. Anyway, thanks so much for watching this. Hopefully you learned a lot about charging the Lucid Gravity. I can't thank Lucid enough for inviting me and Tom ahead of all the press events to come and charge this car and share those results with you. And that's it. There you go. All the data's on our website. If you want to skip the video, too late now. Thanks for watching. See you in another one again soon. Bye-bye.